So the best way to walk the chaotic path is using an example. And I'm going to use Boston Impact Initiative Fund 2 as the example today. So just to go back a little bit, Boston Impact Initiative was founded in 2013, and we had a pilot fund, and then we developed Fund 1, and now in 2023, we're in Fund 2. What Boston Impact Initiative is a community-based impact investing fund that works on closing the racial wealth divide. And the purpose of that is to build a sustainable, inclusive, and equitable economy. We do that through integrated capital, which means all the capital tools in the toolbox, equity, debt, grants, and everything in between. It also means all the types of capital, so financial capital, knowledge capital, social capital, and political capital. And so through integrated capital, it's a catalyst for building these kinds of power in our community. And the why we do it is to transform the field. We want economic and racial justice to be at the center of all community-based investing. In our Fund 2 that we launched in actually October of 2022, it is a $20 million investment fund. It uses integrated capital, both debt and equity, but a lot more equity, which you'll hear more about than most funds that are in the community-based investing space do, that are debt funds. And we focus on early stage and growth enterprises led by entrepreneurs of color and community-owned and controlled real estate. Of this $20 million fund, we're expecting about 40 to 50 investments. It'll be a 10-year fund, and it's focused on the Northeast, so centered in Massachusetts, but serving all of New England and upstate New York. And you see some of the core targets, right? We want to advance racial equity, build ownership and power, fill the equity capital gap, and target integrated returns. So financial returns, yes, but also social and ecological returns. That's the fund. And I want to just go into the framework, back to the Chaordic Path, to start with that first part, which is what is the need? And I reframe that as the opportunity. And here we're going to lean into the capital absorption framework that the Center for Community Investment introduced us to. There's another module where I interview Robin Hackey, the founder of the Center for Community Investment, and she walks us through this capital absorption framework. So I'm not going to get deeply into it here, but for each stage on the Chaordic Path, I want you to see the framework or the teaching tool that we're going to use, and then the example. In the case of the opportunity, we want to look at shared priorities. That's what is the community's shared priorities? What does the community who lives in the place need or want for themselves? We need a pipeline of investable opportunities. So just because they need and want something doesn't mean there's something you can invest in to fulfill that need. So we need to know that there's an investable pipeline, and that there's an enabling environment, meaning the policies, the ecosystem of practitioners, et cetera, that are in that community that allow these investable priorities to succeed. So that's the framework. And again, there's another whole module on that. But to go into the expression of that for Boston Impact Initiative, what is the opportunity? It starts first with declaring what community are we talking about, which geography, right? So we are looking at, you see in the red highlight, New England and upstate New York. This is a community with a very high growth and diverse populations, Black, Latino, and other people of color and businesses. There is an accelerated displacement happening. People are moving, there's gentrification, people are being pushed out of cities, and home prices and rental rates are rising. You also have a deeply growing racial wealth gap. It was already there, and it's getting accelerated, both in the urban core, but also in rural areas. And finally, because we're talking about not just the problem, but also the opportunity, a significant clean energy transition, solar, offshore wind, and more, that's being concentrated in New England and the coast. So a lot of opportunity in this geographic area. And now what else about the opportunity? So it's really critical. We look at the dynamic of change that's happening in the demographics of our country. So in the United States, by 2045, give or take, we're going to have a new majority in this country, meaning the white population will be the minority, and Black, Latino, Asian, Indigenous, and other people of color will be the new majority of our country, of our workforce, our electorate, and our economy. And nationally, businesses owned by people of color generate a lot of revenue, right? 1.4 trillion. There's 8 million businesses. They're growing 10x. So there's enormous amount of opportunity to invest in them, but there's a problem, which is that only 66% of businesses owned by Black and Latino entrepreneurs are getting the capital they're seeking. So we're really missing out on serving who needs to be served. Also, in Massachusetts, Black and Latino people make up more than a fifth of the state's population, but they own just over 3% of businesses with employees that other than sole proprietors, which is less than half the national rate of Black and Latino ownership. So we need to really consider what's happening in our place in Massachusetts and beyond. So articulating that need, we need a 574 million more capital directed to Black and Latino entrepreneurs in Massachusetts alone, right? And 25% of that demand is for equity capital, not for debt. And so that's what we're really looking at as in terms of the opportunity. There's a lot of debt out there, but a lot of entrepreneurs need some other form of capital than debt, equity or near equity, and they need patient and not extractive equity capital in order for them to run their businesses and grow. There's a tremendous amount of inequity in venture capital funding. So a lot of people turn to venture capital for their equity capital. It accounts for 93% of early stage equity investments. And yet, as it shows on the slide, only 2.4% of venture capital nationwide is invested in Black and Latino founders, and 0.4% in Black-owned startups in Massachusetts in 2021, which are shocking figures. We are not getting capital to where it not only is needed most, but where there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. And finally, in terms of the equity capital gap, those folks, the capital providers aren't out there offering it. So community-based funds, which are often CDFIs, community development financial institutions, and nonprofit lenders, they're not really offering equity capital. They mostly offer debt. So less than 2% of them are offering equity. So that's the mismatch in capital supply and demand. And so we have this large unmet need, and we think that is the opportunity for Boston Impact Initiative to play a role.